Been cleaning the Galaxy. I see a few where all this alloy was shiny and I thought I could do that. It was just all white paste splattered everywhere really. So I'll give it a good clean up. And I got this in. I got it on sticky pads, so it's isolated. So the mains earth only touches that. But this thing was a bit confusing. It fuses the input to the radio's board, which is nice. And on the right there, that transistor and stuff creates a 10 volt supply, and that 10 volt supply powers all the lamps and LEDs on the front. And since I've hacked it, I've got it to work well via the switch to power the radio, but the 10 volt supply is now 13.8. So I've got to decode this beast, find out why it's not producing 10 volts, find out how these are supposed to work, because it's a variable resistor but it does absolutely nothing. So yeah, instead of just creating a very smooth and funky 13.8 for the board, it's got this 10 volt line, which is probably a very low current, very stabilised low current. So you get voltage fluctuations, but the meters still work correctly. That's what I'm thinking. So that's interesting. I finally got a schematic. But yeah, 3 resistors, 4 capacitors, a transistor to create 10 volts. You can't just put a resistor in, because they create a lot of heat and they fluctuate and they're no good. You need to have a resistor for current limiting or voltage limiting, or anyway, you can't just stick a resistor in. So that's why you got a bunch of components to create 10 volts. You start with 14, you go through that lot of shit and you come up with that. So all I'm guessing at the moment is the current's reduced a lot, the transistor creates something stable. So I wish I had a hammy, wish I was more social and made a hammy friend to run it all through. But yeah, it's not as... I'm taking it you didn't have to go through this create a 10 volt thing. I've got some ring connectors. And there was some shit under here. Anyway, I made that pretty. That's to the board. Don't need a fuse anymore, because that was for the original 110 volt system. But yeah, there was a board. I've lost it now. That was where the mains comes in, and I looked at it, saw 3 tantalum capacitors and 2 inductors, and thought that smooths out the crap and interference from the mains before it goes up to the transformer. So I kind of recognised it straight away, and I kind of felt like I've learnt something recently. I suppose I could have used it really. I don't know why. Yeah, thinking about it, I could have kept it and used it. Could always work it out and put it back in line. But yeah, to think the mains comes in, it gets smoothed out. Not smoothed, you know, filtered and smoothed. Then it goes into the transformer. There's basically a lot going on. You can't just get 12 volts and off you go. It seems to be these base stations, this particular base station's got a lot of thought put into the power creation, a lot of circuitry. Sort of no wonder they work so well, really, with all that. I've got an AC ripple voltage of 2 milliamps or something, and that 3 milliamps, and the spec is, that is what the spec is. You always get it on switch mode power supplies. So if you measure AC on the DC output, if you put an AC meter on, you get a small reading, and that has to be below a certain amount, otherwise I guess you get hums and things. So that's what I did Saturday, 12 hours, that's where I'm at. And I've ordered a few chips, which is a digital way of reducing 12 to 10. I might try that. That's where I'm at, man. It's the Galaxy SMPS project. I haven't added ferrites here. I've been adding capacitors for filtering here. Not gotten anywhere. And to the board, I'll wrap a few just ferrites around there, because coming out of the switch mode power supply, you kind of have a capacitor across the plus and minus, and then you put an inductor, so it's just basically a ferrite on, I guess, the positive, and that deals with the sort of, minimises the sort of AC that forms a part of a DC current that gets created by these beasts. So the idea is to get it in there and super quiet, not just try it and see what happens. Try and get it in there with some consideration to making it as quiet as possible. And I ain't got round to testing whether 4 amps is enough, so I've got to do that. Might need something bigger.